A very concerning incident indeed. Let's now welcome Clinical Director at the Teddy Bear Clinic for Abused Children, Dr. Shaheda Omar, who joins us to also weigh in on this incident. Doctor, it's great to have you with us, although on a sour note. I want us to firstly talk about the emotional as well as psychological impact that such a harrowing incident can actually have on such a young child, where you have been scarred for life, basically, not just physically. This must be every parent's or child's worst nightmare.
Labor on the word, what you said, scarred, because the wounding is so deep. It's actually not the physical wounds. The physical wounds will heal in time, but the emotional and psychological wounds will continue to linger. They become invisible to people out there. It's not overt, unfortunately, and the child is going to have to deal with this throughout her trajectory at different stages and phases of her life. When she's faced with triggers, with life cycle crises, it's going to, again, affect her, where she's going to have these flashbacks, avoidance of places, settings, individuals, recurrent nightmares, but also other challenges in terms of eating, sleeping, enjoying activities that she previously enjoyed. Because for this child, this is a shock to her system. One cannot even begin to comprehend as an adult if one is faced with such an ordeal. For a child to have to understand and make sense and process this is actually absolutely unthinkable, inconceivable, and unbelievable. I think for this child, it's just a nightmare that she cannot wake up from.
Doctor, how do you even begin counseling such young victims? Because we know, understand that she had to be exposed to all these circumstances because obviously there was no cooperation at her school. So drastic action actually needed to be taken. So now the dignity and protection of these young children from such exposure must be a difficult task, especially taking into account, firstly, the age of this victim. Can you achieve this in such instances? How do you begin counseling these kids and also letting them know that it's not their fault?
Indeed. So it's not impossible. I think that's something I would like to instill hope in many parents out there, that we've worked with children over the years, provided their feelings, their experience, their trauma is validated, that they are believed and they know that their significant others, the ones that they are close to and loved by, continue providing that kind of support and shifting the blame. That in itself is a powerful healing tool, but also knowing that they will not have to journey this painful journey on their own, but will receive not only the love and support and care from their significant others, but also care from professional mental health individuals that can support them, support the family, because it's not only support for this child, because the child doesn't understand the complexity of this trauma, but for the adults, for the family members who understand the complexity, it's even more daunting, more traumatic, and that in itself could be very, very devastating if the child sees how it has affected her family and her loved ones. So, of course, support needs to be ongoing. She may not be able to process things immediately, but the support needs to be ongoing, and of course support to the family as well on managing her routine, responding to her needs, ensuring that she feels safe, and ensuring that she follows a routine on a daily basis. They should not stop on that routine as well. So it's very difficult, but I want to say that children that have gone through this, there have been many children that have come out, we cannot say cured because that is not possible, but these children have come out with strong coping skills. And some of them who we work with and who are adolescents and adults have also reflected on the journey and said that they had no control over what happened to them, but they do have control on how they respond and react, and they do not want the abuse to punctuate or define them.
Absolutely, Doctor. I mean, you and I are always talking about the need for harsher legal reforms, but in such instances where we understand there isn't even cooperation on the school's part, leading to, of course, the Education Department deregistering the school there. Marches are currently taking place around various places today in demand for justice. Has the state not failed this young girl? I mean, we understand the school simply gave this child, a young child, the parents of this child, after such a complaint, a transfer letter basically to say, do not associate our school's name in the story.
And for me, this is a huge problem, but we have to look at the bigger picture here. You are absolutely correct. The systems, the very systems that are supposed to protect our children are failing here. Department of Education, and if you look at the private schools who fall under the Independent Schools Board, there seems, there's a lack of integration, coordination, collaboration. There isn't tight reins here. And the fact that the school could actually give this child a transfer card to go to another school is secondary victimization, punishing the child for being sexually raped, for being abused, punishing this child, and the school being deregistered. What about all the other children? Are they being punished for that? Shouldn't stricter measures be taken against those who are responsible for such a violation, for such a heinous crime, which is totally unacceptable? But we also need to get Department of Education on board to ensure that the independent schools do not have free rein to do as they are doing, because a lot of children are falling through the cracks because in the independent schools, Department of Education is not as connected. There needs to be tighter reins, there needs to be more rigor, there needs to be more coordination, ensuring that people are held accountable.
Absolutely, Doctor, because, I mean, speaking to the department there, they basically were saying that they do not have that wider reaching jurisdiction to actually deal in this regard. As you're saying, they basically saying their hands were tied and the only way and thing that they can do was to deregister the school. I mean, they are the custodians of the school's policy, the law. They should be dictating how actually the conduct of these schools actually should be monitored.
Indeed. So we have to also look at what role and responsibility does Department of Social Development have here? Social Development is also custodian of the child. So Department of Education and Department of Social Development should have pooled their resources and worked tighter in ensuring that the relevant victims are addressed and supported, and the perpetrators certainly brought to book. This is just unacceptable, as I say, because the Department of Education is now not acknowledging or unable to acknowledge responsibility because of the Independent Schools Board, and therefore there needs to be more consultation. Because I think what is important here, that the Children's Act supersedes everything, every other piece of legislation when it comes to children. And one has to look at the best interest of the child, promoting the best interest of the child. So here, Department of Education, Department of Social Development needed to intervene and ensure that children's best interests have been pursued.
And Doctor, I'm sure we're going to hear some more because, we're always saying such offenders are repeat offenders. It's not possible that this was an isolated incident. Maybe something is going to come out of the story at the end of the day. Doctor, thank you so much, as always, for sharing your views with us. That is Dr. Shaheda Omar. She's the clinical director at the Teddy Bear Clinic, also weighing in there on the alleged rape of a 7-year-old girl in the Eastern Cape.